Former President Joe Biden left office, but is still raising money for a presidential library in Delaware, the state that started his political career by electing him as senator 53 years ago. President Donald J. Trump has already raised millions for a library in his name. There are almost 30 presidential libraries or study centers celebrating American presidents. The latest being built will remember a president who died more than 100 years ago and, by today's standards, has a difficult legacy. Barry Peterson traveled to a small town in North Dakota to tell that story.
The Lakota Nation call this Mako Sija. The first French explorers translated that into the Badlands. A place so dangerous it can kill in an instant, yet so serene it can heal slowly. And healing is what a broken 25-year-old Teddy Roosevelt sought after his mother and wife died on the same day in the same year, hoping physical strength could rebuild inner strength.
He tested himself physically, mentally, and he proved that he could do it.
Edward O'Keefe wrote, "The Loves of Theodore Roosevelt, the women who created a president."
And as he later said, it's better to wear out than rust out.
O'Keefe is also CEO of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, now under construction. It will rise gently out of the prairie, with huge windows facing the Badlands and a grassy walking trail on the roof. The $330 million complex will open in July of 2026. Near Medora, North Dakota, population about 150. Roosevelt traveled to the Badlands from here because Medora was as far as the railroad went. When you stand in Medora, I feel like there's Roosevelt everywhere. Like there are statues, there's the Rough Riders restaurant over there and hotel. It's soaked in Teddy Roosevelt.
This is Teddy's town.
Right down to the souvenir teddy bears. But the real Roosevelt was far from warm and fuzzy. When he took office, he had a legacy of animosity towards Native Americans. He once said, "I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are the dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of every 10 are, and I shouldn't like to inquire too closely into the case of the 10th." So to tell Roosevelt's story, the library will also tell about Roosevelt's prejudice. The hardest part of this whole process is creating a Teddy Roosevelt honestly, even though in our day and age, we would call him a racist.
You approach it with transparency and honesty.
You tell the story.
You tell the whole story. I don't think that it actually diminishes TR to understand that he made mistakes. You know, he said things that are regrettable, that we wish he hadn't said, but he did.
So the library has asked Native American tribes to create their own exhibits, telling their own history.
If we tell the truth, we maybe learn from it.
Mark Fox is chairman of the Mandan, Hidatsu, and Arikara Nation. What would I learn or see from the contribution of Native Americans that would tell your truth in this library?
For example, the virgin soil epidemics that reduced our population from 50,000 combined to less than 5,000 people in a year and a half. Smallpox and other diseases that killed our people rapidly and changed our lives forever.
And it's not just a point of view, it's also the actual view.
My Lakota name is Oshkate Tawa, which means his celebration. And my Anishinaabe name, my Chippewa name is Mishtet Kiwapitin, which means many visions.
Scott Davis was executive director of the North Dakota Indian Affairs Commission. You look out the Badlands and you see river, mesas, mountains, not the way we see them.
We see them in a spiritual context. So your standard church, your synagogue, well, for us up here in the plains, it's our altar is that prairie, that rock, that butte. That's our place that we went to pray for generations.
But who owned the Badlands was never in doubt in Roosevelt's era because of manifest destiny. What does it mean? Does it mean whites will prevail?
So manifest destiny is the idea that God has ordained this American race, which is predominantly white, the dominant race, has ordained them to conquer the continent.
Dr. Larry Scogan is an historian and former president of Bismarck State College.
Those that are not part of that dominant race will either become part of that dominant culture or will disappear.
The library will deal with Roosevelt's legacy from the beginning. They're starting from scratch and saying, okay, great guy, but here are the warts.
You recognize these individuals and the great contributions they made to our society and to our country. In the past, we have not, therefore, identified the things that they did wrong. I think we're getting to a stage where we should be able to do that.
He's 5'8". I'm 5'7 3/4". My shrinking has begun.
Joe Wiegand plays Roosevelt.
Joy the Medora Campground. Bully, I'm here to do my show. Me and Teddy.
In a local historical play.
On occasion, I meet someone and they close the book on Theodore Roosevelt because of one thing he wrote or said when he was a young man.
To know Teddy, we decided Joe was the next best thing. Take me into Teddy's personality. What have you learned about him?
The glory of work and the joy of living.
What's your favorite thing about Teddy Roosevelt?
His personality is something that's been spoken of as being electric or magnetic, something that inspired others.
He was the first president who fought to conserve America's wilderness, setting aside 230 million acres of America's West, most of it forest, knowing that even in the harshest of nature, a soul can find serenity. For CBS Saturday Morning, Barry Peterson, Medora, North Dakota.
It's just beautiful out there.
It certainly is.
We have a tendency to want everybody to be good or bad, and there's nothing in between, and that is not what people are.
Well, he was complicated, seemingly at odds with himself. The first president to invite an African American to dine with him, that was Booker T. Washington. The first to appoint a female African American as postmaster, and a number of other very prominent positions within government. I think, he was a great admirer of individual achievement. And so what's so interesting is that juxtaposition. Some things he said and things he did. And then
you can't wipe it away. You have to open the whole book on all of it, which is what they are trying to do.